Hey y'all, how's your week going? Hey, before we get started with this video, have you heard of this new YouTube channel that started about 4 months ago called Cryptid's Canada? She is a prolific video uploader. She uploads 4 or 5 videos a week and she's doing a great job, and her channel is growing, which means she's putting out some good content. Cryptid's Canada, go check them out. I'm gonna put a link in the description below. And I'll put one of her videos on the end screen so that when you're done with my video, you can go straight to hers and listen to some cool stories as well. In this video, this Marathon 94, getting close to 100, we've got 4 stories in this one, and they're really good. The last one's real spooky. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right, here we go. Here's an email from Jeff, and here's what he writes. Back in the late 70s, I had just graduated from college and was getting ready to move from Sioux Falls, South Dakota to Houston, Texas. Back then, there was a large group of us that hung around together all the time since we got out of high school. One weekend, we decided to go to a park just east of the city called Beaver Creek. It was a wild prairie park with natural restored prairie grasslands. These days, it's pretty much in the city limits. A creek flanked this grassland on 3 sides with a couple of pedestrian bridges. Thick old oak trees covered the steep bluff in a horseshoe shape around this flat picnic area where there were a few pavilions and a parking lot. I think that day was a holiday because there were a lot of people there throwing frisbees and playing at the playground. My group had settled into a pavilion just across the creek from the dense woods. There were bushes and trees so thick you couldn't see into it at all. We were just enjoying the day, grilling on the barbecue and having some beers. Out of nowhere, the bushes violently rustled and a flock of birds flew wildly up into the sky. It sounded like Niagara Falls. It was really loud. It was so startling, almost everyone in the small park stopped and looked. Then there was a monstrous, chest-rattling growl that lasted for probably 15 seconds. It was like the rumble coming out of an old steam engine. We were in absolute shock. And then there were these earth-shaking stomps that we all felt through the concrete floor of the pavilion. Without even thinking, we dropped everything and ran to the parking lot along with a dozen other people. I have no experience with hunting and I'm not familiar with wildlife, so I asked one of my friends who does hunt, "Do you think that was a deer or a cow?" "That was no deer or cow," he replied. We stood there for about 10 minutes and didn't hear anything else. So we eventually went back to the pavilion and got our stuff and everybody went home. Some of us were pretty certain that we knew what this thing was. Just as a side note, back in the 70s, there were all sorts of UFO sightings and strange lights in this area that even made it into the newspaper. A friend of mine was a park ranger who lived in the ranger house at Beaver Creek, and he said he woke up one night when there was a full moon, and he saw 3 massive black figures moving through the prairie grass. He thought they might be cult members because they looked like they were wearing robes with pointed heads. He never felt comfortable there. I moved to Houston in 1980. I have come back to retire. Compared to Houston, Sioux Falls is a safe and convenient place, and I haven't read or heard anything of such activity in the past 20 years. There are other strange activities that took place at that time. If you'd like, I'll send more of these events. I just don't want to bore you. Man, I hope you do, because none of these bore me. They don't, and all the people who listen to this, none of these stories bore them. So if you got, I just want to say this, if you have even a benign, what you might think is a pretty insignificant encounter with something you thought was strange, please consider sending it in, because they're all important to me. They're all great stories in and of themselves. So, Jeff, thanks for sending this. No, it wasn't boring, and it's really interesting that something that big would be as close to that many people in the woods there. I think it's crazy. I think it's real interesting. Thank you, man. Here's an email from a woman who wants to keep her name private. She writes, December the 2nd, it was Monday in 2019, Grand Junction, Colorado. Our house is on the edge of a semi-rural area known as Orchard Mesa. On its western side, it extends into canyons, into the Colorado National Monument, which is similar to a small Grand Canyon. These canyons extend south into the La Salle mountain range by the border of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. On the eastern side, there are fields, farms, vineyards, pastures, and small hills which all connect to the bottom of the Grand Mesa, a 10,000-foot high mountain range, the largest mesa platform in the country, having alpine fields and hundreds of lakes. The Colorado River threads through the Orchard Mesa, coming from the same direction of the Grand Mesa. The river in this section is heavily wooded on both sides with a wide variety of wildlife. The lakes and the streams have healthy fish populations as well. Mountain goats and lions are also in the area. Our house is on a half acre of land and is enclosed with a high wooden fence. In the back section of the yard, there is a sectioned off old garden. Our neighbors only have a wire fence that our dogs would get through, so we kept it blocked off. There's a bigger, older shed the size of a garage closer to the house. It is connected to a smaller metal shed by a wooden gate. This 8-foot-high shed has nothing next to it on all sides. These sheds block off the section with the old garden, and no one has been back there in 2 years. Monday night, December the 2nd, 2019, one of my dogs went running out of the door barking. The other dog followed. They were barking like when people are walking behind the house by the canal and the small road there. But the barking was frantic and was focused on one area. I jumped out of bed, worried the dogs would be bitten by a rabid coon, and grabbed a flashlight, which I keep in a cupboard close by. I got to the door and down the 3 short cement stairs while shining the flashlight towards the dogs. They were all barking at the bottom right side of the small shed where it is attached to a fence with the sectioned off garden area. Something was behind the shed, and I called for the dogs. They immediately turned and ran towards me. I'm grateful that I didn't have to drag them back to the house. I know it couldn't have been a bear since they were starting to hibernate in mid-November, and if it was a bear, it would most likely have run off or roared at them. A big cat would have run off too, and if it were the loose pit bulls that we've heard are jumping fences and getting cats, it would have fought back. The dogs ran up to me and I opened the door to hustle them in. I kept shining the light towards the area. This flashlight is so strong it literally lights up the entire backyard. It's 1,500 lumens and it is light like daylight when you shine it, so you don't have to swing it around. You only need to hold it in one area, and the entire area for many feet on all sides is lit up like daylight. I stepped over a little closer in the direction of the small shed, being cautious not to go all the way over to where they were barking at something. I saw someone moving behind the shed towards the back on the left, which was my neighbor's wire fence. I thought, crap, someone is back there. Who is it now? Why could I see them moving behind the shed so high up? There was nothing to stand on. Did my crazy neighbors build a platform back there that they're standing on? There are people who break into houses in this area. It looked like they had a tannish-looking coat on, and they were sort of hunched over. What were they doing? This person was moving really slow, like they were shuffling while looking down at the ground. I wondered why they were not reacting to the light. This all happened in a matter of seconds, and now they were moving from the left corner towards the right corner of the shed. I stepped back towards the door and into the house as fast as I could. And I was thinking frantically, should I wake John? What do I do? Oh my God, I don't know what to do. He won't believe me. I mean, he knows these things exist, but he won't believe me that it's here in our yard. It's just too much of a coincidence. The next day I went out to take pictures behind the shed. There are parts on the grass that resemble giant footprints, but too much grass to be certain. It was evident that something was walking around out there, but it couldn't have been a bear or a raccoon. As for the Bigfoot the night before, it was behind the 8-foot-high shed, and its head was at least a foot above it. I took some more pictures to show measurements of the shed and the footprint-type marks, as well as the tamped-down areas of grass, but they really don't show much at all. And then she writes, I don't care anymore if my full name is used. I'm just really disturbed about the timing of this encounter. Scott Carpenter is right, I think. I'm now thinking these things can track us like bloodhounds. It's too much of a coincidence. And then she signs off. Her name is Kim. I'm not going to give you her whole name. I said that she wanted her name anonymous, but I guess I was confused, but I'm still not going to give her full name. This was interesting. It's just kind of a circumstantial thing where she walks out in her backyard and she sees something huge walking with its head sticking up above an 8-foot high object. It's just awesome. And I think there's a lot of these encounters out there. If you guys have had one like this, send it to me. I'd love to share it with our audience. Thanks, Kim, for the email. Here's a short email from April in Alabama. Here's what she writes. Hey, my name is April. I want to tell you about my encounter. It's not much, but it left me wondering. My girlfriends and I had been to the movies and we were making our way back home. It was probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night. We came up on a hill and then it dipped down into a curve. And as we approached the curve, my friend's headlights hit the figure of something crouched down like it was eating something. And then it turned and looked towards us. We could clearly see the eye shine. It stood up on 2 legs and it walked into the woods like a human. Did you see that? We all said at the same time. It was not a bear. We don't have bears around here. And when we passed the point where the creature was standing, we saw what he was interested in. A dead possum was laying in the road. It was eating roadkill. All the way home, we were trying to figure out what we had just seen. It was scary but exciting all at the same time. We are convinced that we saw a Bigfoot that night. I have been infatuated with Bigfoot ever since. Thank you for your YouTube channel. I really enjoy it. God bless. April. Well, April, thanks for watching my YouTube channel. I really appreciate you more than you know, and for sending in this story. And this is actually, these little stories like this to me are so good, because these are the exact kind of encounters that a lot of people have. They see these things in their car, and it would for me leave such a mystery in my mind. What in the world did I just see? Because it doesn't resemble anything else like deer standing on the side of the road at night as you pass by. You're used to that. You see that. But if you see something crouched down eating roadkill, then it stands up. You know it's a biological creature because it has eye shine, and then it walks up into the woods on 2 legs like a man. Holy crap. Anyway, I love these kind of stories, April. Thanks for sending it. Here's an email from a woman who goes by the handle of Camping Turtle. She didn't want her real name revealed, but she said I could use the Camping Turtle handle, which I think is really neat. Here's what she writes, and this is a kind of a spooky story. I wanted to write to you after months of listening to your channel on YouTube and give you my own unsettling accounts of the 2 run-ins I believe are Bigfoot. After talking to my younger sister, she agreed that I should tell you my stories. I grew up in a religious family, and there were 6 of us kids. We lived on a lake not even a half a mile from the state line of Michigan, just inside Indiana. The lake, even then, was fairly well developed, and since my father had grown up there, he wanted us to enjoy our childhood in much the same manner that he had. The lake at that time was surrounded by farm fields and enough country to not feel too much like suburbia. There were plenty of dirt roads around those parts, and then houses on the outer roads were not boxed in one on top of the other. My father kept an old washing machine tub as a live well down along the edge of the lake near the shore. We loved to fish. Out of all of us kids, I could spend the entire day on the water or the shoreline, drowning worms and keeping my line perpetually wet. When it got too hot, a simple quick dip would cool me off and I would go right back to fishing. Pretty funny for a girl, some would say. Back then, we hadn't gotten central air yet, and when summer came creeping with the humidity, there wasn't a spot I would rather be than in my parents' bedroom playing a card or board game on their massive bed with either my dad or one of my sisters or brothers. The windows faced the lake, and by putting a box fan in one and opening the other, we had cool, fresh air running through the room. I was 6.5 at the time, and my little sister was 4. My younger sister and I were sitting on the bed playing checkers when I specifically remember a feeling of fear come over me. I glanced up toward the window, and 2 huge red eyes were clearly staring at us. The eyes moved from my sister to me, and I heard and felt a very low growl. I urgently whispered to Nikki, "There's a monster in the window." She looked over and screamed, and together in a tangle of arms and knees and legs went running out of the bedroom door screaming for my mother. By the time my mom went to look, the eyes were gone. "It's probably just a raccoon," she said. "No, Mom, it wasn't. They were too big to be a raccoon's eyes," we told her. She said it had probably been a boat out on the water, and it just looked like a pair of eyes. When we told her we saw it blink, she hushed us up gently, put us to bed in the middle of the bedroom that we shared with a sister who was just a bit older than me. We had seen lots of wildlife by then because we were always scouring the woods and fields, bringing home this animal or that. Even one time I brought home a baby raccoon. Daddy made us put that one back, and our uncle cautioned us not to steal baby wildlife because oftentimes they would die if taken away from their mothers. It wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I became familiar with what is known as Bigfoot. When I did, that memory came flooding back. Now that I suspected what the eyes were, I measured the height of where we saw the eyes, and it was between 8 and 9 feet off the ground. When I was 31, I started bow hunting, and I fell in love with the sport. By then, I had been married for just a little over a decade and had 3 sons of my own. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I was damn good at it. I would practice the entire day after getting my chores done, and more than one arrogant man lost a $20 bill when they would bet me that they could outshoot me. But I won't go into that right here. One afternoon during the season, my husband dropped me at my stand. I loved the solitude. The woods are a calming place for me, a place to unwind from the pressures of motherhood and my responsibilities on the farm. I sat there most of the afternoon watching fox kits playing as the sun went down, and even though I hadn't seen a deer, I felt like it had been a good day in the woods. Suddenly, the fox kits all looked in one direction at one time. They were looking past me as if they saw something behind my stand. I assumed it was a deer or maybe another fox. I never heard anything. The wind was in my face at the edge of that cornfield just in the tree line. The kits bobbed their heads from side to side and then up and down, and then quickly moved in the direction of their den, which was only a few yards away. I waited, and in the last embers of light from the sun, I scanned the now darkened interior of the woods. Again, I saw and heard nothing. The lights from the exit point on the toll road came on and were now illuminating all the way down to where I would cross the short 45 yards to the cornfield from my stand. I had waited to come down until total dark so as not to have my stand blown and to give any deer that might be moving after legal shooting light a chance to recede back into the woods. So I moved quietly, making sure to take my steps carefully and roll my foot and not make any noise. I felt rushed all of a sudden, like I should be moving quicker and get out of there. I can't tell you for sure what it was, just a sudden fear that I had not experienced before while I was in the woods. I began making my way down the edge of the field, keeping myself closer to the corn than the actual woods. I suddenly heard something paralleling me in the woodline, and when I stopped, it would stop. This cornfield was huge. I had to go down to where the field was sliced in half with a track large enough to drive down and cross eastward the entire 125 yards to get to where I knew my husband had parked. The second time I stopped, I had knocked an arrow. My hands were shaking, but at this point I knew not to run and stay as calm as possible, even though my body wanted to cook taters and get out of there. I got to the cutout area and turned to take a quick glance back. A silhouette stood on the path I had just come from, approximately 35 yards behind me. I have never been in fear so bad that I could literally feel my blood turn to ice. My heartbeat felt very loud in my ears. I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or what, but for some reason I yelled, "Guardian of the woods, descendant of Esau and Cain, leave this place in the name of Jesus Christ and do not come back." I felt its grunt long and drawn out in my chest, and it slipped with one step back into the woods. I ran all the way to the car and screamed at my husband, "Why didn't you come get me from my stand?" He looked at me perplexed and said he hadn't wanted to leave the boys alone in the car. It wasn't until weeks later he finally got me to tell him what happened. I refused to go back into those woods, and I didn't really want him to go either. I did, however, go the next year and every year until about 5 years ago when my health began to worsen. I now am too frail of health to do much camping or hunting, and I can't walk very well anymore. My sister once commented that a lot of people who have these encounters are in bad health. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta. It's called the brittle bone disorder. We were called the children of glass. At 14, I had surgery at the Shriners Hospital to have installed 2 titanium steel rods to correct severe twisting and scoliosis of my spine. I have never let my health issues affect me much and often relocate and dislocate joints and fix and secure splints for fractures that I don't deem doctor visit worthy. I'll tell you what, Mr. Cryptid, if I get these old knees replaced before hunting season this fall, I will be back in the woods. And then she signs the email, excuse me, Camping Turtle. I appreciated this email so much. Number one, it's just a spooky story. She's got 2 encounters with these things. But I've walked out of the woods 100 times, when it's just gotten dark, and you can see a little bit, but you can't really see. And your light actually messes up your vision at that time of day. It's like light, no light. You probably do better with no light, but you can't see any details. And to actually walk up on something that is silhouetted like a Bigfoot 35 yards away or standing 35 yards behind you, that would scare me off of the woods for a long time, and I don't blame her. But I hope you're doing well, Camping Turtle. I hope your health has improved and you've been able to get your knees replaced and maybe get back out in the woods. At any rate, this was a wonderful story, ma'am, and I really appreciate you sending it to me. And I hope you all are well up there in Indiana, close to Michigan. Thank you. All right. That's going to wind us up for this video. I really appreciate you listening this far, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks.